Good morning and welcome to the April Burnsville Business Briefing. We're glad you could join us this morning. We are going to run through our agenda, which will be an update from the City of Burnsville, a chamber update. We have Jennifer Byers here from the Minnesota Chamber to talk about the economic imperative, and Travis Bistido from the City of Burnsville talking about economic development, and we'll have time for a discussion at the end. So with that, we will dive right in with Dan Keeley, City Council member, with a quick City of Burnsville update.
Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, everybody. Nice crowd this morning. It's great to see. Just going to cover some highlights of what's going on in the city of Burnsville for everyone's benefit. Um, we have a little shift in our schedule coming up because there's a special election in ISD 191. And so we're shifting our quarterly roundtable, which we have with our department heads, to the week of April 14th. And then because of the special election on May 12th, May 12th, yes. Our work session that normally starts at 5:30 is going to start at 4 o'clock and will conclude by 6. So we, by law, don't overlap the election. Under development and infrastructure, a lot of major projects going on. We've got a new apartment complex called Volta, built by Roars, and that was as of last week, it was 84% filled. I received an email from them. I think they have 9 units left, fully leased. That's a 60% AMI qualification apartment complex. And I know for a 3 bedroom, it's about $1,950. And folks are these are folks at 60% or less that usually get some sort of support from the county or the state. The other thing we've got going is there's a permit in for the Hampton Inn for some repairs for winter water damage. That doesn't sound good. We just had some recent grant success, 337,000 from DEED to fix sanitary sewer capacity issues in our North River Hills area, as we anticipate one day some development coming from the closure of a school in that neighborhood. Under Public Works, we're about to start painting our Colonial Water Tower. Exciting stuff, and we also recently secured 50,000 in DNR grants for a milfoil control on Keller Lake. Eurasian milfoil is an invasive weed species, very prominent in Lake Minnetonka if you've ever boated out there. Under transportation, we've got a $68.5 million bonding bill that was introduced at the in the House. And I think it was done, and I think Travis can correct me. It was either the city of Savage or the Scott County group that put that in. But we're part of the 13 corridor, and it kind of came as a bit of a surprise. But we always love extra help in funding things from the state bonding if we can get it. Under public safety, mental health, we are pursuing a pilot partnership with the University of Minnesota physicians to coordinate a crisis response between police fire, utilizing the opioid settlement funds. We've probably been very novel and innovative with how we've applied those opioid funds in being able to try and prevent people from getting into addiction situations. So it's a really cool model, and it's something I've brought forward to the National League of Cities. Under facilities, everyone knows we have a major project going at City Hall. It's great to see some of the progress moving along. Brick on the exterior is finished, and some of the interior mechanical and some floor tiling is going up. So we're getting closer and closer, even though there's still, I don't know, Travis, a year and a half left there's still phase 2 and phase 3. We're just finishing up phase 1. And police in phase 2 are going to move out of their entire space into temporary space while that is remodeled and gutted and incorporated in part of the interior of the existing building. Under financial planning, the good news, if you want to look at it that way, we did a 10-year financial management plan update, and we are looking at a proposed estimated 7.69 property tax levy increase for 2027. We've got a long way to go. We just started that process. We don't make the final decision and vote until December, but it's now become about a 9 month, I would say, budget process each year for the council, where in the past it was more of a 6 months. Maybe it's 10 months, Travis. It probably is a 12-month cycle inside City Hall, but from a council standpoint, we kick it off about 9 months in advance of that final decision. And then finally, under community and environment, um, we have some environmental initiatives that are in full swing, which is exciting. An annual hydrant flushing has already begun. That's a sign of spring when we get out and start flushing the hydrants. And we have some controlled burns that are planned pretty quick here for the Allen Magnet and Terrace Oaks parks, of course, as weather permits. Um, and by the way, our free tree program was a major success with 300 trees already reserved. Thank you. Back to you, Jennifer.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan, for the great update. With that, I'll give a quick chamber update here. Can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
just want to make
Yep.
sure. Thank you. Coming up, our AM coffee break next week is at Best Coffee and More. That's part of the school district. It's at the Diamond Head Education Center, and it's a student-run coffee shop that we look forward to visiting and learning more about. Our out to lunch is at Valley Natural Foods, and there's a business after hours is the Lakeview Bank Annual Awards Celebration and after hours that we do in partnership with the Lakeville and Apple Valley Chambers. We have the State of the City address coming up Monday, April 13th. It's going to be a great program at the Ames Center. I hope everyone will plan to join us for this great update as well as reception afterwards. And a Small Business Week, Thursday, May 7th, a luncheon celebrating small business and honoring. We will present our annual awards, including our Business Person of the Year award at that event. So plan on joining us for that. And with that, we have 3 parts of our program this morning. And the first part is the economic imperative with Jennifer Byers, the Vice President and of Grassroots and Chamber Relations, as well as the Executive Director of the Minnesota Chamber Foundation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good morning, everyone. Let me first start by saying thank you to the Burnsville Chamber for being such a great partner. And I would say I don't say this to all of our local chamber partners, but we really do appreciate the partnership in a number of ways. First, on advocacy, the Burnsville Chamber and Jennifer and her team really provide us good insights on what she is hearing from local businesses and connecting those views with legislators, really helping us kind of understand the local impact of issues. Second, on our business education effort, the Burnsville program with the Burnsville High School and the Burnsville School District is really a model that we share with others across the state. So it's another partnership that we really value. And finally, on Grow Minnesota, which is maybe more akin to this conversation today, really helping companies stay and grow in Burnsville and in Minnesota is really important. So it's important work. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. So my comments are really going to focus more broadly on the performance of Minnesota's economy as we think about how it impacts Burnsville and other communities. And Jen, you can go to the next slide. The Minnesota Chamber Foundation has been doing kind of in-depth analysis of the performance of Minnesota's economy for about 8 years now. And we really are the only statewide private sector organization doing this work, really thinking about the performance of Minnesota's private sector economy. Clearly, there's DEED that does some of this work. There's foundations that think about regional growth. Obviously, we have the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis, but we are really coming at this from how is Minnesota doing in growing our private sector economy, and what do we do well, and what are the challenges? We have produced reports. You see Minnesota 2030. That is a broad look at Minnesota's economy. We've done work on the benefits of immigrants to Minnesota, both as entrepreneurs and workers. We've done work around entrepreneurship. 2 years ago, we released a report on Minnesota's environmental permitting process. We heard for 30 years about Minnesota's permitting process being much slower, much more complicated than other states. And for the first time in that period of time, we put data to the problem. And we found, for example, as we compared Minnesota to other states on air permitting, Minnesota's goal to release an air permit is 150 days. Minnesota was on average releasing air permits in 650 days. So if you think about a business with capital on the sideline wanting to invest in Minnesota with that uncertainty, it was a real challenge. And the good news is that that data was the result of a bill at the legislature, which actually passed a reform bill, and the Governor Walz, issued an executive order earlier this year, and we have seen those timelines decrease. So that's like a perfect example of how this research results in outcomes. We use data and then try to drive solutions. So for today's conversation, we are talking about the Minnesota Business Benchmarks. This is really where we compare Minnesota to other states. And this year, we look at dozens of rankings, but this year we really focused on 3. And what we found that Minnesota is lagging other states in its economic growth. And so we are really launching something called an economic imperative for growth, to which we would like the Burnsville Chamber's partnership on in really changing the direction of Minnesota's economy and growing the pie for everyone. This just isn't a business issue. This is about making Minnesota a better place to live and grow a business across the board. Next slide, please. So why is it important to grow the economic pie? You know, Dan was just talking about the city budget and the need to raise taxes. A more quickly growing economy provides more revenue for cities and school districts and the state. It really lets us grow the economy to be more attractive for people to live, and really sends a signal that we want companies to invest here. But as importantly, it really makes Minnesota a better place for its citizens with rising incomes, more job opportunities, more housing opportunities. So this is a win-win. This is a win for the business community, and it's a win for Minnesotans. Next slide, please. So you can go ahead, Jennifer, to the next slide. We really think Minnesota is at a crossroads here, and I will show you some data. But also, you know we're going to have a new governor next year. We have elections in place at the state and local level. And it's really an opportunity to think about creating a narrative around Minnesota's economy and the role that our leaders play, both public and private, in driving some change. So first, Minnesota really does have some advantages. We really have some assets that we need to recognize. And certainly one is high per capita income. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we also, and then we hear this for companies that locate here, the workforce is an issue. A good asset to have is having the 6th highest labor force participation and a highly educated and skilled workforce. You can see we ranked 5th with the highest share of adults with a 2-year degree or higher. We're innovative. We have the 5th most patents per capita in the US. And we can't really take our Fortune 500 headquarter economy for granted. It's an important part of our fabric in the state of Minnesota, and it drives other business growth, and it attracts talent to our state. We have a diverse economy, which is particularly important as you think about economic cycles. So unlike maybe a Michigan of the past, where all of their eggs were in the automotive industry basket, we have a very diverse sector. So, when it's spread across a number of industries, our highs and lows aren't quite as dramatic. And then you can see there the industry clusters where we have particular assets. Next slide, please. But economic growth is slowing over time. You can see here GDP annual growth rate by decade in Minnesota, and you can see a significant decrease, and really, as we project out to 2030, where we're going to be. And this is true other places, but the growth rate isn't as slow. It is more dramatic here in Minnesota. Next slide. And so what our business benchmarks showed us as we tried to find three key indicators that really measure economic growth. So like I said, we measure all kinds of things, but we think if we could change the trajectory of these 3 indicators, it would really demonstrate that Minnesota is on a stronger economic trajectory. So first is GDP per capita. So this is productivity per person, if you will, commonly used by economists to measure economic growth. And you can see that we rank 38th in the country at just 1%. Minnesota's labor force growth and labor force participation ranked 40th, so just 0.2%. And finally, domestic migration. So this is, are more people coming to Minnesota? Are more people leaving to Minnesota? And you can see that over that 4-year period of time, we lost nearly 50,000 Minnesotans to other states in the country, ranking 41st. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to show you a few slides on data, and then as we get towards the end, talk about kind of some of our recommendations moving forward. So here you just see that Minnesota's real GDP per capita was a real advantage. Minnesota is the blue line, but that has eroded over time as the United States has caught up. We are really on par, and actually the US is now exceeding Minnesota on real GDP per capita. Next slide, please. And again, labor force growth. As we look out at Minnesota's percent change in total labor force growth, you can see really a significant decrease from before 2000, 0.2% now. And Minnesota is only expected to add 55,000 people to the labor force in the next decade. So think statewide across the entire state of Minnesota, 55,000 people, which really stresses the importance of, certainly we need to get everyone off the sidelines that wants to get in the workforce, but we also need to think about things like productivity and giving our workers the tools they need to be more productive in the workforce. Next slide, please. So this slide, actually, this is a little kind of messed up, but you can get the point with the direction of the bars. But if not for international migration, Minnesota would be losing population. Foreign-born individuals coming to Minnesota through legal immigration, refugee status, is the only reason we have sustained our population. Otherwise, we would be in a net deficit. So the blue bars here are immigrants. The orange line, the orange bar, is domestic migration. Next slide, Jennifer. So this is maybe a little bit better snapshot of domestic migration. So you can see here that in 4 of the last 24 years, we had a positive gain. And that is most recently. You see in 2025, we had 8,000 more people come to Minnesota than leave. However, the trend over the long term is negative, and that adds up over time. So it's not just kind of 1 or 2 years that is a concern. It's the concern that over that period of time, we've consistently had more people voting with their feet and leaving Minnesota than coming to Minnesota. And I would just, so first on the good news in 2025, we hope that's something we can sustain. So we're digging into maybe why that is the case. We know that there's about a 2% increase in enrollment in Minnesota's higher ed institutions. So that may be part of it. But it's certainly something we want to focus on going forward. And, folks will say, well, this number is really a result of people retiring to Florida and Arizona and Texas and other places. And that is true to an extent. We do lose a greater portion of folks in their 60s and 70s. But the biggest portion of folks leaving Minnesota, the biggest age group, are those between 15 and 24, specifically 18 and 19-year-olds who are choosing to leave Minnesota for higher education or a job. And they don't always come back. While we do see an inflow of folks in their 30s when they're maybe settling down and raising families, it is not enough to make up for the loss of that cohort in the 18 and 19-year-olds. So an issue that we want to address moving forward. Next slide, Jennifer. So, and you can go to the next slide, Jen. What are we going to do about this, and what are some of the barriers? So these are things, state level barriers are things that we can actually control. So as we survey the businesses, and Jennifer does the work in Burnsville, one of the top issues we have consistently heard from our members across the state is Minnesota's tax burden. And you can see on the chart here where the tax foundation compares all the states in the country. We've just shown you the Midwest region and our neighboring states. And this is an analysis of not just corporate and personal income taxes, but the full tax burden in the state. So sales taxes and everything. And you can see we rank 44th least competitive. And you can see how we compare to our neighbors. So that is an issue. And again, we think this is something that it is in our control. Minnesota's tax climate is in our control. And so as long as I've been at the Minnesota Chamber, our goal has to be to get out of the top 10 in terms of personal and corporate income taxes. And we have not made any progress on that. And in fact, we see proposals every year to add a fifth tier and to raise the tax burden. So clearly a challenge, but one that we do have control over. Regulations and mandates, I talked about Minnesota's environmental permitting process. And like I said, that's an example where we've put some data to the issue and we are working on it. And the legislature passed a bill and the agency is working on it. So that is a positive example. We certainly have work to do there, but the continued passage of workplace mandates at the legislature, driving up costs and complexity, and really kind of sends a message that it is challenging for companies to do business here. The one thing, as we hear from our members, and I'm sure you do as you visit with your companies in Burnsville, is certainly taxes are an issue and regulations are an issue. But one of the things that businesses look to most is certainty and stability. And so I'll give you one example. For example, a couple of years ago, there was legislation passed to incent the investment in data centers in Minnesota. And then the next year, there's an effort to kind of halt data centers in Minnesota. And regardless of what you think about data centers, it's just one example of, on one hand, 1 year we're for it and the next year we're not. And that just sends a signal to the investment community that it is really challenging to make plans in Minnesota. And then the overall cost of doing business. We are higher than other states across the country. Next slide, Jennifer. So as you think about cost of doing business, we also think about cost of living for Minnesotans. And again, trying to change that domestic migration number. And you can see our cost of living compared to neighboring states. Our neighbors are more affordable. And a couple of things that we are looking at are, certainly we talked about taxes. Minnesota's personal income tax rate, particularly on the higher end, does not help attract talent. College tuition and fee affordability ranks 40th. And you can see our growth in new housing units is 48th. And that is a real concern. And there have been a number of bills at the legislature to try to kind of jumpstart housing investment in Minnesota that have not gone anywhere. And this is certainly an issue that we know communities like Burnsville are dealing with. And we see a lot of investment, for example, in rental housing in Burnsville, which is terrific. But housing generally across the state is a significant issue. And it really is an issue in our ability to attract workers at all levels. Next slide, please. And here you can just see this is a demonstration of the housing issue in Minnesota. This is a housing permits index. Minnesota is the orange line. And you can see we kind of kept pace with the country generally. And since 2021, we have really dropped off more significantly in housing permits in Minnesota. So an issue that we really need to look at, and we need solutions around this to really, if we really want to grow Minnesota's economy, we need an investment in housing statewide. Next slide, please. So opportunities ahead. Next slide. So we really have, despite those challenging data points, we really have opportunity in Minnesota. We have a number of sectors that are really ripe for investment. Manufacturing is the second highest employer outside of healthcare and kind of public employment across the state. We know we have advantage in natural resources, whether it's minerals or ag, medical and life sciences. You can see the list here. But we do have advantages we can take advantage, we can leverage in Minnesota. Next slide, please. And that is true really at all levels. Here you'll see just a few examples of investments in Minnesota. So next slide. So we do see investment happening, but we think we could see more investment. Again, this slide is a little out of whack here, but really what we're trying to show with this slide is that it isn't just big company investment. We saw a significant uptick in small company startups really coming out of the pandemic. And we thought it perhaps was just a blip relative to people being on the sidelines or perhaps out of work or at home starting new companies. but that has been sustained. So it's really important to kind of wrap support around those startups and help them grow and expand in Minnesota. One of the things we know is that we have one of the best 5-year survival rates in the country. So if a company can get going, we do have some support for those companies in Minnesota. And while many will stay sole proprietors, several will grow to be, significant operations in Minnesota. Next slide. So what's next? So really, as I said, we do have considerable economic strengths. We really want Minnesota business leaders, community leaders, public officials, elected officials to really think how they can leverage some of this data and think about strategies, both public and private, to change our growth. We need to do better. Growth is impeded by challenges in Minnesota's business climate and really our poor performance in attracting talent in Minnesota. So as we go to the next slide, Jennifer, and I wrap up, so I kind of described a lot of challenges. And so we want to do more than just talk about the problem and admire the problem and offer solutions. So we are working on a report with a series of recommendations around these 3 themes. So strategies to unlock more business investment and innovation. This is things like providing more consistency and certainty in Minnesota's regulatory and policy process, streamlining the process for companies to expand and grow in Minnesota so that they don't have, on one hand, an agency trying to help them along and another agency trying to slow them down. We think a comprehensive look at Minnesota's tax system from top to bottom is overdue. We need to expand initiatives in key sectors. And like I said earlier, increase support for small companies and startup businesses. In terms of workforce, we really think we need to look at Minnesota's workforce system across the board and really change it from being more of a provider-centric workforce system to one that is focused on employees and employers, the customers. And we also think we need to do more work that, for example, the Burnsville Chamber is doing with the high school around connecting students to opportunities and high demand careers and work experience early on in their high school careers. And finally, strategies to grow Minnesota's communities and workforce. This is things like housing, childcare, thinking about strategies with Minnesota's higher ed institutions to attract more students to Minnesota, and really being a leader on providing Minnesota's contribution to a comprehensive legal immigration system that will really make Minnesota a continued attractor for foreign-born workers. With that, I'm going to pause. Thank you so much for your partnership. I will tell you we're having an event where we're going to release these findings and these recommendations on May 15th at Ecolab in Eagan at their R&D Center. So I'd invite you to join us. I'll get Jennifer the information, but welcome your feedback on this data and these strategies. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us. And I don't know if anybody has any immediate questions or if Jennifer's able to stick around for a few more minutes for our discussion at the end. And she's saying yes. Awesome. So with that, we're going to jump right into, we're going to bring this a little bit more local. And so we've seen the big picture that the Minnesota Chamber is working on. And today we have Travis Bistodeau, the Deputy Community Development Director at the City of Burnsville, to give us an update on economic development in Burnsville. Good morning, Travis.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate being here. As Jennifer said, I'm Travis Bistodeau. I'm the Deputy Community Development Director for the City of Burnsville. And just as a bit of background and perspective, our department is responsible for reviewing and approving all of the construction permits that come into the city. We're responsible for planning and zoning activities. We have a small but mighty economic development team in our department, as well as our neighborhood services team, which manages our rental licensing program and deals with things like neighborhood complaints. And as Jennifer said, I'm here to provide a brief update on the city's economic development accomplishments for this year and perhaps a bit of a forecast for what we kind of see coming down the pike for the rest of 2026. Next slide, please, Jennifer. So our goals around economic development remain consistent. We attempt to create an environment that's supportive of business attraction, promote job creation. We look to find opportunities for new development and redevelopment within the city, and then advise the council on any new economic development policies that we see value in. Next slide, please. In 2026, we had kind of a unique situation, and we had several opportunities to really focus heavily on keeping housing affordable for the workforce that we depend on within the city. In September, we renewed our contract with our service provider, Center for Energy and Environment, and relaunched our existing two Economic Development Authority funded housing rehab programs. This includes a home loan rehab program and a senior deferred home loan program. Both have been designed to help property owners in Burnsville help maintain their homes and frankly help maintain the high quality housing stock that we already have in the city by providing low interest loans to lower income folks who really are struggling to keep that home up. Since we relaunched the program late last year, we've had one home improvement loan approved, and keep in mind these are loans of up to $50,000 in value, with two more currently under review. And then for those senior deferred loans, we had two approved and expended, which basically spent our whole EDA budget on that senior deferred loan program in 2026. But that's a strong indicator of demand for those types of programs, at least among senior households. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, Jennifer, can you go back? In addition, our city council took what I think are some bold steps to further address the affordability crisis that we see in the city. We are using a new metro-wide sales tax called Local Affordable Housing Aid, and we activated a couple of new programs. We essentially quadrupled the funding that we had in place through the EDA for those rehab programs that I just mentioned. We are now providing $400,000 of new funding annually to address the demand that we see for those rehab type programs, specifically focused on families that are at that lower income level. So this is our first year using LAHA for Local Affordable Housing Aid is referred to as LAHA. This is our first year using LAHA to fund those types of activities. So we'll see how that goes, and we're hoping we can kind of address the demand that we see there. And then in addition, the piece that I'm really excited about, 2 weeks ago, the council and the EDA approved the use of LAHA dollars to begin our own down payment assistance program. So this program will pay for half of a traditional 20% down payment for a lower income family who wishes to buy a home in Burnsville. They need not be a first-time home buyer, but anybody who wants to buy a house in Burnsville that's at a lower-ish income level. And then furthermore, if that family invests for the long term, and if they stay in that home for the full term of their 30-year mortgage, that down payment will be forgiven. We are currently funding this and piloting the program this year at $200,000 in 2026, and we're planning for another $200,000 in 2027. But we are the only Dakota County city that is standing up a program like this and using our LAHA funds in this way to address our specific needs. So that one in particular, I'm excited about. We're aiming for a May 1st-ish launch date. Next slide, Jennifer. We also continue our partnership with the Dakota County Community Development Agency. We receive a small amount of federal community development block grant or CDBG funds every year from the federal government. And we partner with Dakota County CDA to spend those funds on their home rehab program, which is very similar to ours, but specifically targeted on Burnsville homes. So in terms of the rehab work that we're doing within the city in trying to maintain our housing stock and keeping these homes livable for our existing homeowners, we are funding about $700,000 annually on low interest loans to keep our housing stock in good shape. Next slide, Jennifer. On a more economic development focused front in 2025, the city completed housing and commercial needs assessment about this time last year, which is a great document. It's available on our website if anybody wants to peruse it. I could put a link in the chat later, which identifies where our community should really invest in terms of our commercial properties, some of our zoning work, residential units, to really facilitate long-term economic growth within the city. That study found just kind of some high points that we're uniquely positioned within the South Metro with regards to our mid-sized, older, a little bit lower ceiling height, but less expensive industrial buildings and spaces, which are perfect for new and growing manufacturing businesses within the South Metro. The study also identified, not terribly surprisingly, but that we're home to a very advanced and growing medical campus that has ultimately resulted in many spin-off businesses, which is a unique strength to Burnsville that other Southern Metro communities don't have. That same report, however, identified that we have some challenges on the housing front, which is why our council has focused some of those LAHA dollars where they have. We have lower rates of home ownership compared to other similar communities, and we have a lot of cost-burdened families that are spending, by percentage, too much of their income on either rent or mortgage. So there's more work to be done there. We then used that housing and commercial needs assessment to craft our new economic development strategic framework, which is kind of our guiding document from a city perspective and on economic development efforts that we want to engage on for the next 3 to 5 years. So to summarize where we think we're going over the next 3 to 5 years, we really want to lean into and preserve the industrial spaces, those unique kind of, like I said, lower ceiling, smaller, older, but still in great shape industrial spaces within our industrial corridors. We want to preserve and grow our medical districts and really try to support growth within the medical services industry in Burnsville. We want to support workforce housing. We also want to activate vacant city and vacant privately owned properties that we have kind of sprinkled throughout the community, and we have some efforts underway to address those. And then the last piece was addressing some of our brownfield sites and collaborating with the county to clean up some of those locations and then encourage redevelopment in those spaces. Next slide, Jennifer. In other accomplishments, we have made amendments to our city-owned land sale policy, providing clear guidance for strategic disposition and redevelopment opportunities for city-owned lands. We have a project that will be coming before the council in July, where we will, my team will recommend to the council that we perhaps sell a number of our vacant city-owned parcels or some of the splinter parcels that really are not of any economic development value. Perhaps we want to sell those to adjacent property owners and use the resources that we do have to really encourage some additional development that we haven't thought of in previous years. We continue to support our business retention and expansion program through partnering with the Chamber and Jennifer, meeting with local employers to help identify their specific needs and trying to connect them with resources. We continue to partner with Open to Business, who offers one-on-one technical assistance to entrepreneurs and small businesses that are hoping to create a business or set up a business in Burnsville or grow that business here. And then we continue to support legacy events like the popular Burnsville Festival and Fire Muster and international festival, events that really showcase Burnsville, draw in people to see all that Burnsville has to offer and improve and increase some foot traffic on our local establishments. Next slide, Jennifer. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't provide you all with a sense of how development occurred last year from our perspective, and perhaps a little bit of what looks like it's coming down the freeway for us this year. I have a team of 3 inspectors who work to inspect our 11,000 rental housing units. We continue to work and inspect and maintain those rental units to ensure that they're of the highest quality. We conducted over 3,500 rental unit inspections throughout the city last year. We also completed nearly 700 construction plan reviews. So those are construction projects that come in. They can be small. Oftentimes they're small, like decks and things like that, but quite a few commercial permits as well. And from those plan reviews, we conducted over 10,000 construction-related inspections. And all told, we permitted $313 million worth of construction permits last year. And for some perspective, the previous year, which we thought was a good year, we permitted about $250 million worth of construction permits. And so far in the first quarter of 2026, our building permit valuations are again up about 20% from last year. So it doesn't feel like there's any slowdown in sight. And then we also participated in 20 ribbon cuttings, celebrating new businesses and reopening businesses here in Burnsville. So from our perspective, the economic development outlook and activity looks really good, even though interest rates still remain pretty high. We've had some labor disruptions that we've heard about over the past few months, but based on what we're seeing, things are looking really solid in Burnsville going forward. And with that, I can hang back as well, Jennifer, and take any Burnsville specific questions. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Travis, thank you for that update. That's really insightful and helpful. I will just give a couple of quick updates here from the chamber perspective. Both Travis and Jennifer mentioned that we do participate in the Grow Minnesota program, which is a partnership with the Minnesota Chamber, the City of Burnsville, and the Burnsville Chamber, in which we conduct visits, which are designed to understand needs, identify trends, and connect with resources. We visited 26 businesses in 2025, and since we reinvested in this program back in 2020, we visited 146 businesses, and this just helps us kind of keep our finger on the pulse. It's usually myself and a representative from the city that goes on the visits, and then we fill out a form with the Minnesota Chamber that helps them keep track of trends in businesses around the state. To hear the full update on the 2025 Burnsville business visits, you can join us for the May 13th Economic Development Commission meeting, where we'll be giving that report. You can tune in. We'll share a link to that when we have it. But I just wanted to share a little bit about that. What we have been finding as far as trends, the business trends seem pretty stable, I would say. There is a slowdown in hiring, but there's also a slowdown in turnover in employees. We're finding a lot of employers are maintaining their workforce a little bit better. People aren't job hopping quite as much as they have been over the last 5 years. And when we meet with these business owners, we're always trying to identify their needs. And the needs that we most often find are people are looking for connections within the community, either personally or professionally, just for themselves, their employees, or their business to be better connected with everything from local nonprofits to the local governments to legislators to whatever it might be. They also want to be connected with other businesses. So they might have certain requests of, I'd like to know someone in this industry, or I'd like to know someone at that business, and we're able to help bridge some of those, make some of those introductions, and also resources. They might be looking for loan support, grant support, whatever it is, and sometimes even just questions. We always say no question is too strange for Beth and me when we're on a visit. They can be as mundane as signage questions or other sort of off the map questions, but we enjoy doing them. I have a QR code here. If we haven't been out to see you and you'd like to have us come visit, please let me know. You can either email me directly or fill out our Chamber Connect form, which allows you to share a little bit of information about your business, but also request a visit. With that, these business briefings are the first Friday of every month, and we do record them. Occasionally, we have a special report that's not on a first Friday if a timely issue pops up, and you can always go to our YouTube page to find past recordings. We did have a special report on Burnsville Road construction a few weeks ago, so that is, if you want to know what's happening this summer, we had an update from MnDOT, and you can hop on there to see what's coming down the pike for this summer and summers to come. We have a few more big projects to go. With that, as I said, recording every Friday morning. So you can join us here for Chamber members live to be in the room, or you can watch the recordings. And our next one will be Friday, May 1st, a little QR code to that one. Upcoming topics include everything from, we haven't set the topic for May yet, but it includes things like our legislative wrap up, public safety, transportation, and other key issues for our businesses. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. I am going to stop our recording and open the room for discussion. So thank you for being here.